Close your eyes for a moment and imagine yourself standing on the deck of a ship far from shore. The world you know has faded behind the horizon, and ahead of you lies nothing but endless water meeting endless sky. Tonight we're going on a journey together, not through miles of ocean, but through the quiet, beautiful moments that make life at sea so remarkably peaceful. Let the gentle rhythm of these stories wash over you like waves against a hull. There is nowhere you need to be, nothing you need to do. Just breathe and let yourself drift. There's a particular kind of darkness you only find on the bridge of a ship at night, miles from any shore. It's not the darkness of a room with curtains drawn, but something deeper, more complete. The bridge is kept deliberately dim. Only the soft amber glow of instrument panels and the faint green luminescence of radar screens break the blackness. This darkness is purposeful, carefully maintained so that the watch officer's eyes can adjust fully to the night outside. Standing there in that hushed space, you become part of the darkness itself. Your vision expands beyond what you thought possible on land. After 20 minutes in that gentle gloom, your eyes open to a world most people never see. You can distinguish between shades of black, notice the subtle difference between the sky and the sea, spot the faint phosphorescence of waves breaking against the bow. The people who keep watch here speak in low voices, almost whispers, as if something about the darkness demands reverence. There's a meditation to it, watching the compass, checking the instruments, peering into that vast nothing, trusting that your course is true. Hours pass in what feels like moments, or perhaps moments stretch into hours. Time becomes as fluid as the water beneath you, and in that darkness, you find a kind of peace that the bright, busy world can never offer. Deep in the belly of every vessel, there's a rhythm, a pulse that never stops, never falters. It's the ship's heartbeat, the steady thrumming of the engine far below your feet. Unlike the jarring noise of machinery on land, this sound is different. It's constant, reliable, almost alive. When you first come aboard, you notice it everywhere. A low, resonant hum that seems to emanate from the very walls. But something remarkable happens after a few days at sea. The sound doesn't disappear. Instead, it becomes part of you. It's like moving into a house beside a waterfall. At first you hear every drop, but soon it becomes the sound of home, the sound of safety. Crew members will tell you they sleep better at sea than they ever do on land, and this heartbeat is why. It's a lullaby that rocks you through the night, a constant reassurance that all is well, that the machinery is healthy, that you're moving forward through the darkness toward tomorrow. Some sailors say that when they finally return home after months at sea, the silence of their bedroom feels wrong, too quiet, almost unsettling. They miss that heartbeat. There's something deeply comforting about it, knowing that while you sleep, while you dream, that steady pulse continues. The ship takes care of you, carries you, and asks nothing in return but to let yourself trust in its ancient rhythm. One of the most extraordinary things about life at sea is that you carry your own personal horizon with you, and it's always the perfect distance away. No matter where you walk on deck, no matter which direction you face, your horizon remains exactly the same, roughly 3 miles away if you're standing on the deck of a large ship, perhaps 5 or 6 miles if you climb to the bridge. This horizon is yours alone. The person standing 30 feet from you has their own horizon, their own perfect circle of visible ocean. It moves with you, loyal as a shadow, constant as the sunrise. There's something profoundly peaceful about this. You are always at the exact center of your world. On land, Horizons are interrupted by buildings, by trees, by hills that break the line. But at sea, your horizon is complete, unbroken, a perfect ring of possibility surrounding you. It's the same view that sailors have gazed upon for thousands of years. Standing there, you're connected to every human who ever wondered what lay beyond that line. Every explorer who ever trusted the wind. And here's the beautiful thing. Your horizon isn't a wall or a limit. It's an invitation. It moves with you, always ahead, always welcoming, suggesting that no matter how far you travel, there's always more to see, more to discover. Yet there's no urgency to reach it. It will always be there, 3 miles away, patient and perfect, waiting for you like an old friend. As darkness settles over the ocean, small lights begin their nightly vigil. On every ship, on every buoy, in every lighthouse along distant coasts, navigation lights burn with patient purpose. Green on the starboard side, red on the port, white at the stern and mast. Each light speaks a silent language that sailors have understood for generations. These lights are sentries, guardians keeping watch while the world sleeps. They don't call out or make noise. They simply shine, steady and true, small beacons of order in the vast disorder of the sea. A ship's navigation lights are like its signature, its way of saying, I am here, I am real, I am keeping my course. On a dark night, far from shore, you might see another ship's lights on the horizon, just 3 small points of colored light in the immense darkness. Just 3 small points of colored light in the immense darkness. Yet from those 3 lights, an experienced sailor can tell you everything. Which way the ship is heading, how far away it is, whether your paths will cross. It's a conversation without words, understanding that transcends language. There's something deeply reassuring about these lights. They represent order, safety, the shared agreement of everyone at sea to watch out for one another. When you see them glowing in the darkness, you're reminded that you're not alone out here. Somewhere beneath those distant lights, other people are keeping their own quiet watch, maintaining their own vigil, trusted guardians of the night. Without television, without reliable internet, without the 1,000 distractions of modern life, sailors at sea rediscover an ancient form of entertainment. The sky itself becomes the greatest show on earth. During the day, clouds become characters in an endless, improvised play. Towering cumulus clouds stack themselves into impossible castles, their tops gleaming brilliant white, while their bases smolder in shades of grey. You watch them form, evolve, and dissolve, an entire life cycle that might take minutes or hours. Some days the clouds arrange themselves in perfect lines, like ripples in sand, stretching from horizon to horizon. Other days they pile up into thunderheads, so tall they seem to pierce the atmosphere itself, and you give them a wide berth, respectful of their power. But it's the sunsets and sunrises that truly astonish, with nothing to block or filter the view. With the horizon unbroken in every direction, the sun's daily journey becomes a performance of impossible beauty. The colors don't just fill part of the sky, they fill everything. Oranges and pinks and purples, so vivid they seem unreal, spreading from one horizon to the other, reflecting off the water until you're suspended inside a sphere of pure light. And then the stars. Oh, the stars, away from cities, from light pollution, from even the scattered lights of highways and towns. The night sky reveals itself in its full glory. The Milky Way isn't just visible, it's a bright river of light flowing across the heavens. You can see colors in the stars, Watch satellites drift silently across the darkness. Spot meteors streaking past with such frequency you stop making wishes and simply smile. The sky becomes a clock, a compass, a companion, and every night it performs just for you. There's a particular quality of sleep found only at sea, a rest so deep and complete that people who've experienced it spend their land-bound lives trying to recreate it. It begins with the motion, the gentle, endless rocking that feels like being cradled. Your bunk becomes a sanctuary, swaying with the ship's movement through the waves. On calm seas, it's a soft, slow rhythm, barely perceptible, like sleeping in a hammock beneath trees on a windless day. The ship rises and falls, and your body surrenders to the pattern, letting go of every tension, even in rougher weather. Once you've grown accustomed to it, the motion remains soothing. Your body learns to flow with it, to become part of the ship's dance with the ocean. You're no longer an individual lying in bed. You've merged with something larger, something ancient. The eternal conversation between vessel and wave, combined with the ship's heartbeat, that constant engine hum, and the absence of sudden noises or bright lights. Sleep at sea becomes almost transcendent. Your mind, so accustomed to racing through lists and worries and plans, finally grows quiet. There's nothing to plan out here. The ocean decides when you arrive. The ship knows where it's going. Your only job is to rest. Many sailors say they dream differently at sea. Deeper dreams, more vivid, sometimes lasting the entire night. It's as if the boundary between waking and sleeping becomes softer, more permeable, and you drift between the two states as gently as the ship drifts across the water. One of the most profound changes that happens when you leave land behind is the way time itself seems to transform. The rigid structure of hours and minutes that governs life on shore begins to dissolve, replaced by something more fluid, more natural. Days blend together in the most beautiful way, without the markers of daily life. No commute, no appointments, no weekend versus weekday. Time becomes circular rather than linear. You wake, work, eat, rest, sleep, and then do it again. But each cycle feels complete unto itself, not leading anywhere, not building towards some future moment, just existing perfectly in its own present. The sun and the watch schedule become your only clocks. 4 hours on watch, 8 hours off. The rotation continues, unchanging, reliable, and within a few days, your body adapts completely. You stop thinking about what day it is. Monday or Thursday, it doesn't matter. The ocean doesn't care about calendars. This loosening of time is incredibly freeing, without the pressure of deadlines and schedules, without feeling like you're always running behind or racing ahead. You exist fully in each moment. When you're on watch, you're completely present, alert, alive. When you're off duty, you rest completely, without guilt, without that nagging feeling that you should be doing something else. Some crews mark the passage of time in crossings of time zones rather than days. You might lose an hour as you sail west, gaining an extra hour of sleep, or gain one heading east. These shifts happen so gradually, so naturally, that you barely notice, and it adds to the dreamlike quality of time at sea. Every day, the ocean paints new masterpieces, and you have a front row seat to an art gallery that never closes, never repeats itself. The waves themselves are sculptures, constantly forming and reforming, no two ever exactly alike. On calm days, the water becomes glass, mirror smooth, reflecting the sky so perfectly you can barely tell where one ends and the other begins. The ship's bow creates perfect ripples that spread outward in precise geometry, mathematical beauty made visible. These are the minimalist days, all subtle blues and silvers, quiet and contemplative. Then there are days when the waves develop personality. Long, rolling swells march across the ocean like moving hills, their surfaces smooth and glossy, catching the light. These swells might travel thousands of miles from some distant storm, carrying energy across the entire ocean. And there's something humbling about feeling their power, knowing they've journeyed so far during storms, watched from safety, respected from distance. The waves become wild expressionist art, all chaos and energy, white foam and dark troughs. They stack themselves into walls, crash against the hull in explosions of spray, perform feats of fluid dynamics that seem to defy physics. Even in their violence, there's beauty, the raw aesthetic of nature unleashed. But perhaps most magical are the days when wind and current and light combine perfectly, and the waves develop colors, deep indigos, bright turquoises, emerald greens. The sun angles through the water, illuminating each wave from within, making them glow like stained glass. You could watch for hours and never see the same combination twice. The ocean is the world's most prolific artist, and it creates solely for the joy of creation, expecting nothing, asking nothing, simply being. Every ship, no matter how large or small, develops secret places, quiet corners where crew members go to find solitude, to think, to simply be alone with their thoughts and the ocean. These spots aren't marked on any map or tour, and they're rarely discussed. You discover them gradually, or perhaps another sailor, trusting you, shows you their favorite refuge. It might be a small section of deck near the stern, shielded from the wind by a bulkhead, where the wake stretches out behind you like a road you've traveled. Some crew members tuck themselves into the space between ventilation shafts, creating a tiny alcove that feels protected, separate from the world. Others climb to the highest accessible point, seeking perspective and solitude in elevation. These corners become sacred spaces, not through any religious designation, but through intention and use. They're the places where homesick sailors sit and remember loved ones left behind, where night watch officers come during their break to breathe fresh air and clear their minds, where anyone feeling overwhelmed by the closeness of ship life can find a moment of genuine privacy. What makes these spaces special isn't their physical nature. They're often just small sections of deck or quiet rooms, but what they represent. In an environment where you're never truly alone, where you eat and work and sleep surrounded by others, these quiet corners are precious gifts. They're permission to disconnect, to not be cheerful or productive or social, to simply exist beside the ocean and let your thoughts unspool like rope running free. The unspoken rule is that when you find someone in one of these places, you leave them be. You nod, perhaps, or raise a hand in quiet greeting, but you don't intrude. These moments of solitude are respected, protected, understood to be as necessary as food or sleep. After days or weeks at sea, land begins to appear, first as a subtle darkening on the horizon, then as a distinct line, then finally as details. Buildings, trees, the green of hills, or the grey of cities. Port arrivals aren't dramatic finishes, they're gentle conclusions to one chapter and soft beginnings of another. There's a particular excitement to approaching land, that it's different from the anticipation you might expect. It's quieter, more contemplative. You've been in a world of water and sky, and now the world of humans is returning with all its complexity and noise and bustle. Part of you is eager for fresh food, for solid ground, for new sights, but another part holds back, not quite ready to leave the simplicity of the sea. The approach to port happens slowly, deliberately. The ship reduces speed, the pilot boards, navigation becomes precise and careful. You watch other vessels, see the harbor taking shape, notice the way the water changes color as it grows shallower. Seabirds appear, their first appearance in days or weeks, reminding you that land means life in abundance. These arrivals mark time at sea, not in hours, but in journeys. You don't count days, you count crossings. Remember when we were in Singapore becomes more meaningful than remember 2 weeks ago. Each port is a milestone, a marker, a moment when the voyage pauses to touch the solid world before continuing onward. And here's the beautiful thing. Each arrival is temporary. Even as the lines are made fast to the dock, even as the gangway is lowered, that soon you'll leave again. The ocean is patient. It will wait for you. This is just a brief visit to the land, a reminder of where you came from before you return to where you belong. Out there, on the endless, peaceful blue, the ocean has its own wisdom, its own pace, its own way of teaching you what matters and what doesn't. In the gentle rhythm of life at sea, the watch is kept, the horizons chased, the stars observed. There's a simplicity that the complicated world often lacks. As you drift off to sleep now, imagine yourself on that deck, rocked by gentle swells, surrounded by nothing but water and sky and the soft sounds of a ship making its way through the dark. You're safe, you're moving forward, and there's nowhere else you need to be. Rest now. The ocean will carry you through the night, just as it's carried travelers for thousands of years, steady and patient and true. Now, let's step inside the world of the ship itself, not just the vessel moving through water, but the living, breathing community it contains. Imagine a small town that floats, a complete world unto itself, with everything needed for life contained within steel walls. As we explore these spaces together, let yourself settle into the rhythm of this floating home. Feel the gentle sway, hear the distant hum of machinery, and know that you're safe within this self-contained universe, drifting across the peaceful ocean. Breathe deeply, and let's begin our journey through the hallways and spaces where life unfolds, far from shore. Like any town, it has its own personality, its own culture, its own unwritten rules and traditions. There are the early risers who greet the dawn with coffee on deck, and the night owls who prefer the quiet hours after midnight. There are social butterflies who know everyone's name and story, and quiet souls who prefer their own company. There are running jokes, shared memories, communal celebrations of birthdays and crossings of the equator. But unlike any town on land, this one is completely self-reliant. It makes its own electricity, purifies its own water, manages its own waste. It has medical facilities and trained personnel to handle emergencies. It stocks months' worth of food and supplies. Nothing comes from outside unless the ship specifically pulls into port to collect it. There's something deeply comforting about this self-sufficiency. In a world that feels increasingly fragile and interdependent, a ship reminds you that humans are remarkably capable of creating complete, functional communities. Everyone has a role, everyone contributes, and the town keeps running smoothly, day after day, mile after mile, sustained by the cooperation and competence of its citizens. At night, when you look out from the deck and see lights glowing in windows, hear the faint sound of conversation or music from the crew mess, you're reminded that you're not alone out here. You're part of a floating town, moving together through the darkness, each person a necessary thread in the fabric of this seagoing community. Above the deck, the superstructure of a ship resembles nothing so much as an apartment block that's been lifted up and placed on a floating platform, floor after floor stacked vertically, each level containing cabins, offices, common areas, an entire village arranged in a tower rather than spread across streets. The lowest levels house the working spaces, engine control rooms, workshops, storage areas. As you climb higher, you move through crew accommodations, officer cabins, recreation areas, and finally reach the bridge at the very top, like the penthouse of this floating apartment building, with the best view imaginable stretching in every direction. Each deck has its own character, its own purpose. The accommodation decks are surprisingly cozy, with narrow corridors lined with cabin doors, each one a private sanctuary. Some crew members personalize their door with photos or decorations, making their small corner of the superstructure feel like home. Walking these corridors, you might hear music drifting from one cabin, smell coffee brewing in another, hear the low murmur of conversation behind a third. The recreational spaces, the mess halls, lounges, gyms, or where the community gathers, where the isolation of individual cabins gives way to social connection. These are the village squares of your floating town, the places where friendships form and stories are shared. What's remarkable is how quickly this vertical village becomes completely normal. Within days, you stop thinking of it as strange to live in a tower on water. You learn every stairwell, every shortcut, every peculiarity. You know which steps creak, which doors stick slightly, which corners catch the best Wi-Fi signal when you're close to land. The superstructure becomes as familiar as any neighborhood you've ever lived in, except this one rocks gently and travels thousands of miles while you sleep. Imagine waking up, eating breakfast, and arriving at work without ever stepping outside or getting into a vehicle. Your commute is measured in steps, not miles, down a corridor, up a flight of stairs, perhaps a walk across the deck in the fresh morning air. There's something profoundly peaceful about eliminating the daily commute. Those hours that people spend sitting in traffic or packed into trains, fighting stress and wasting time, simply don't exist at sea. Instead, you wake gently, have time for a proper breakfast, maybe spend a few minutes watching the sunrise over the water, and then walk to your station feeling calm and present. The boundary between work and life becomes softer, more integrated. You're not fleeing from one world to another twice a day. Instead, work is simply one part of your day, woven naturally into the rhythm of life aboard. Your colleagues are also your neighbors, your dining companions, your friends. The separation between professional and personal dissolves into something more holistic, more human. This proximity means that help is always nearby. If something breaks in the middle of the night, the engineers are just a few decks away. If someone feels unwell, the medic's office is never more than a few minutes' walk. There's a security in this closeness, a sense that you're all looking out for one another, because you're all in the same floating world. And at the end of your shift, when work is done, you don't face another draining commute. You simply walk back to your cabin, perhaps stopping to watch the sunset from the deck, arriving home already relaxed, ready to enjoy your evening. The time that would have been lost to commuting is yours to use however you wish, for rest, for hobbies, for quiet contemplation of the sea. The interior corridors of a ship have their own particular geometry, long, narrow, and surprisingly intimate. These passageways run the length and width of the vessel, connecting every space to every other, creating a network of arteries through which the life of the ship flows. Walking these corridors is a unique experience They're typically just wide enough for 2 people to pass comfortably, which means every encounter is close, personal. You can't avoid eye contact or pretend you don't see someone. These narrow spaces enforce a kind of social connection, acknowledgement of shared existence. People nod, smile, exchange greetings, even if they're strangers. The walls are usually painted in practical, soothing colors, creams and greys and soft blues. Pipes and cables run along the ceilings, reminding you that you're inside a machine as much as a building. The floors are often covered in non-slip surfaces, textured to provide grip even when wet. Every few meters there are doors, some leading to cabins, others to storage, still others to technical spaces that hum with machinery. These passageways have their own sounds. Footsteps echo differently here than on land, creating a rhythmic percussion as people walk. Doors open and close with distinctive metallic clicks. The ever-present engine vibration creates a low-frequency hum that you feel as much as hear. Sometimes you'll hear water rushing through pipes or air moving through ventilation ducts. The sounds of the ship's systems doing their quiet work. What's remarkable is how these narrow corridors become comfortable, even cozy. They're efficient, wasting no space, but they're also somehow protective. Walking through them, especially during rough weather, when the ship is rolling, you can brace yourself against the walls, let them guide you, trust them to keep you safe. These passages become the veins of your floating home, familiar and reassuring, always leading you where you need to go. Somewhere within the ship, often tucked into a space that seems impossibly small, there's a gym, a few pieces of equipment fighting for space in a room the size of a large closet. A treadmill, some free weights, maybe an exercise bike or rowing machine. It's modest, unimpressive by land standards, but out here, it's everything. There's something wonderfully absurd about running on a treadmill while floating in the middle of the ocean. You're moving, but going nowhere, on a ship that's moving and going somewhere, crossing an ocean that's also constantly moving. It's motion within motion, within motion, and there's a kind of Zen meditation to it. The gym becomes a gathering place, a refuge, a space where crew members work out the restlessness that can build up during long voyages. Without the ability to go for a jog around the neighborhood or take a bike ride through the park, this small room becomes essential for both physical and mental health. People establish routines, claiming favorite times when the gym is quiet, or joining others for company and motivation. Working out here requires adaptation. When the ship rolls in heavy seas, your workout becomes an adventure, holding onto the treadmill as the floor tilts, timing your lifts to the ship's motion, laughing at the absurdity of trying to do squats while the room sways beneath you. Some crew members swear that working out in rough seas provides an extra challenge, engaging stabilizer muscles that land-based exercise never touches. And there's something deeply satisfying about maintaining fitness out here, about refusing to let the isolation of the sea make you sedentary. You're choosing health, choosing strength, choosing to take care of yourself, even when there's no gym membership to waste. No social pressure to look a certain way. It's exercise in its purest form, just you and your body and your commitment to yourself, with the ocean rolling beneath you and the horizon stretching endlessly outside. Deep in the ship's belly, there are refrigeration spaces so vast they could swallow your home's entire first floor. These aren't fridges in the household sense. They're cold rooms, freezer compartments, temperature-controlled storage areas large enough to walk through, massive chambers dedicated to preserving the provisions that will feed the crew for weeks or months at sea. The scale is staggering when you first see it. Pallets of meat stacked floor to ceiling, entire walls of frozen vegetables, boxes and boxes of dairy products, eggs, cheese. There's a backup for the backup, redundancy built into every aspect, because running out of food isn't an option when you're 1,000 miles from the nearest supermarket. These cold spaces have their own atmosphere. Literally, the air is thick and frigid, your breath becoming visible the moment you step inside. The cold seeps through your clothes almost immediately, reminding you that these temperatures are necessary for preservation, but hostile to human comfort. Workers who need to retrieve items move quickly, efficiently, knowing that lingering means numbing fingers and chattering teeth. But there's also something reassuring about these massive stores of food. They represent preparation, foresight, care for the crew's well-being. Someone has calculated exactly how many meals will be needed, planned the menus, ordered the supplies. These cold rooms are proof that you're being looked after, that your basic needs have been anticipated and met. The ship's cooks become artists of inventory management, creating varied meals from stores that can't be replenished until the next port. They track what's available, rotate stock to use the oldest items first, plan creative menus to keep meals interesting even as weeks pass. And somehow, despite the limitations, despite cooking for dozens or hundreds, and despite the constraints of a ship's kitchen, they produce meals that become highlights of the day. In the evening, after the work is done and dinner is finished, the ship's crew retreats to various spaces for entertainment. In one of the common areas, someone might set up a movie on the large screen, and crew members gather with popcorn and soft drinks, turning the mess hall into an impromptu cinema. The film plays, and for 2 hours, everyone forgets they're at sea, lost instead in stories from another world. There's something special about these communal movie nights. The selection is often a democratic process, suggestions made, votes taken, compromise reached. Action films are popular, as are comedies that everyone can enjoy together. The shared laughter or gasps of surprise create bonds, inside jokes that will be referenced for days afterward. But equally important are the quiet, solitary evenings when crew members retreat to their cabins for personal entertainment. Many ships now have internet access, patchy and slow but functional, and crew members download shows and movies to watch in the privacy of their own space. Lying in their bunks, headphones on, they binge series just like people do on land, except their bedroom is rocking gently, and outside the porthole, if they have one, there's nothing but dark water and stars. These moments of entertainment serve a vital purpose beyond just passing time. They provide escape, a mental vacation from the routine of shipboard life. They connect crew members to the wider world, letting them follow shows that everyone is talking about, keeping them culturally current even while physically isolated. Some crew members rewatch favorite films over and over, finding comfort in familiar stories. Others work through entire series, season by season, treating long voyages as opportunities to finally catch up on shows they've been meaning to watch. And always, there's the pleasant anticipation of the next port, where internet access will improve and new content can be downloaded, fresh entertainment to sustain the next leg of the journey. The glow of screens late at night, visible through cabin windows or doorways, is evidence of the crew's private lives, their individual choices and preferences, their humanity persisting even in this strange, isolated environment. Entertainment becomes a bridge between the world they've left behind and the world they're currently inhabiting, a reminder that they're still connected to home, even when home is thousands of miles away. At the bottom of the gangway, where the ship connects to the dock, there's always someone standing watch, not a security guard in the threatening sense, but more like a patient sentinel, a greeter and protector combined. This is the gangway watch, and their presence is as much tradition as necessity. They check identification, ensure that only authorized personnel board the vessel. They keep logs of who comes and goes, noting times and purposes. But their role is more subtle and nuanced than simple security. They're the ship's connection to shore, the first face that visitors see, the last farewell for crew members heading into port. Standing there for hours at a time requires a particular kind of patience. In calm ports, the job is quiet, almost meditative, watching the dock, observing the comings and goings of the port, being present without much happening. In busier ports, it becomes more active, checking credentials, directing deliveries, answering questions, coordinating the constant flow of people and supplies. There's a loneliness to this duty, but also a privilege. The gangway watch has one foot in the ship's world and one in the land's world. Standing at the boundary between the two, they feel the solid dock beneath their feet, while the ship rocks gently above them. They smell the port, diesel and fish and city air, while behind them the ship's familiar scents linger. Crew members passing the gangway watch often stop to chat, to share a few words before heading ashore or returning aboard. The watch becomes a confessor of sorts, hearing stories of shore leave adventures, complaints about port prices, excitement about sending letters home, or making phone calls to loved ones. They're part of the ship's social fabric, witnesses to its daily life in a unique way. And at night, standing there under the dock lights, watching the port grow quiet, there's a particular peacefulness to the duty. The ship secure behind you, the wide world spread out before you, and you standing guardian at the threshold, patient and present, keeping watch while others sleep. If you've ever watched a container ship loading or unloading, you've witnessed one of the most methodical, deliberate processes in modern industry. It looks choreographed, almost ritualistic, massive cranes swinging containers through the air with impossible precision, lowering them into exact positions. A three-dimensional puzzle being solved piece by piece. What appears slow from a distance is actually remarkably efficient. Each container weighs tons. Each movement requires perfect coordination between crane operator and deck crew. Each placement must be calculated for weight distribution and accessibility. There's no rushing this process. Haste leads to mistakes, and mistakes with multi-ton containers can be catastrophic. The crew watches from the ship, monitoring the process but often not directly involved. Loading is handled by port workers, specialists who do this every day, but the ship's officers oversee everything, checking manifests, ensuring proper weight distribution, calculating how the loading will affect the ship's stability and fuel consumption. It's engineering and logistics combined, maritime science in practice. There's a hypnotic quality to watching it unfold. The crane's arm swings out, the spreader locks onto a container. The whole assembly lifts smoothly upward, pauses, then swings back to position the container precisely over its designated spot. Then a slow descent, the slight adjustments, the final settling into place. Again and again, container after container, the pattern repeating until the ship's holds are full. For the crew, Cargo operations mean a break in routine. The ship is stationary, connected to shore, temporarily part of the land's world. It's a chance to rest differently, to watch rather than do, to observe the transformation of their vessel from empty to laden, from light to heavy, from one mission completed to the next mission beginning. And there's a certain satisfaction in watching the ship fill up, knowing that all these containers hold goods that people need, products moving from one part of the world to another, commerce and connection made physical and visible. Your ship isn't just crossing the ocean for the journey's sake. It's carrying the world's business, fulfilling a purpose, providing a service that keeps global trade flowing. Before the ship can leave port, before the lines are cast off and the journey resumes, there's another ceremony to perform, the careful, methodical process of taking on fuel and supplies. This is less visible than cargo loading, often happening simultaneously, but it's equally vital and surprisingly beautiful in its precision. The fuel barge comes alongside, or the ship connects to shore-based fuel lines, and the transfer begins. Thousands of gallons of fuel oil flowing through hoses as thick as a person's leg, filling the ship's bunkers deep in the hull. The process is monitored constantly, fuel levels checked, flow rates observed, safety protocols followed with religious attention. Fuel is energy, fuel is life, fuel is what allows the ship to cross oceans. And there's no room for error in this transfer. Simultaneously, smaller deliveries arrive, provisions for the galley, spare parts for the engine room, medical supplies, cleaning materials, office supplies, all the mundane necessities of floating town life. These items are checked against manifests, counted, verified, then carried aboard and stored in their designated locations. The ship's stores are replenished, reserves rebuilt, everything needed for the next leg of the journey secured. There's a quiet efficiency to all of this, a well-practiced routine that happens in ports around the world. The same dance of hoses and lines and deliveries, slightly adapted for each port's particular layout and procedures, but fundamentally unchanged. It's been happening for as long as ships have sailed, this provisioning before departure, this gathering of resources for the journey ahead. The crew involved in these operations move with calm competence. They know the risks. Fuel is flammable, supplies are heavy, mistakes are costly, but they also know their jobs. They've done this dozens or hundreds of times, and they do it now with the smooth efficiency of long practice. For those crew members not directly involved, this is a waiting time, a moment to be patient while the ship prepares itself. They might watch from the deck, or rest in their cabins, or take one final walk through the port. They know that once this choreography is complete, once the fuel is loaded and the supplies are stored, the ship will come alive again, will pull away from the dock and turn its bow back toward the open sea. And there's a deep satisfaction in that knowledge, in knowing that the ship is being cared for, provisioned, prepared, that when you sail, you'll have everything needed to sustain life and work for weeks or months, that someone has thought about every necessity, planned for every need, ensured that your floating town will thrive as it crosses the ocean once more. Life aboard ship is a balance of extremes, the vastness of the ocean beyond, and the intimate closeness of the community within. In these steel walls and narrow corridors, in these communal spaces and private cabins, people create a complete world, a functioning town that happens to travel across the sea. As you drift towards sleep now, imagine yourself in that small cabin, feeling the gentle rock of the ship, hearing the distant sounds of your floating home. The fridge hums somewhere far below, keeping supplies cold. The gangway watch stands patient vigil. Your crewmates are nearby, some sleeping, some on watch. All of you part of this traveling community. You're safe here, cared for, provided for, part of something larger than yourself. Let the ship carry you through the night, steady and sure, while you rest in the peace of knowing that everything is exactly as it should be. Sleep well, traveler. The ocean is calm, and morning will come gently. Let's descend into the hidden anatomy of the ship, the spaces most passengers never see, the engineering marvels that work silently beneath your feet. These are the bones and muscles, the arteries and protective layers that keep the vessel safe and strong. There's a quiet poetry in the way a ship is built, in the careful thought behind every pipe and door and channel. As we explore these secret spaces together, let yourself be lulled by the idea that you are surrounded by protection, by systems designed with care, by metal shaped with purpose. Breathe slowly, settle in, and let's journey into the calm, steady heart of the ship itself. At the very back of the ship, hidden beneath the waterline where you can't see it from the deck, there's a massive piece of engineering quietly doing one of the most important jobs on the entire vessel. The propeller, sometimes called the screw by old sailors, is the ship's hidden muscle, the powerful force that pushes thousands of tons of steel through resistant water. These propellers are enormous, often taller than a house, made of bronze or steel alloy. Their blades curved with mathematical precision to bite into the water at exactly the right angle. They turn with deceptive smoothness, spinning hundreds of times per minute, each rotation pulling water from ahead and throwing it forcefully behind, creating thrust, creating motion, creating the forward momentum that carries the ship across oceans. What's remarkable is how quietly they do their work. Yes, there's vibration that travels through the hull, but it's gentle, rhythmic, more lullaby than roar. The water absorbs most of the sound, muffling the propeller's power. Standing at the stern, you might feel the slight tremble beneath your feet, but you'd never guess at the tremendous forces at work just below the surface. The rudder lives here too, massive and strong, a vertical blade that can angle left or right, pushing against water flow to turn the entire ship. Together, propeller and rudder work in perfect partnership, one providing drive, the other providing direction. They're controlled from the bridge, hundreds of feet away, but they respond instantly, faithfully, never questioning, never hesitating. There's something deeply reassuring about knowing this hidden muscle is there, working tirelessly, carrying you forward through calm seas and rough day after day, night after night. It asks nothing, expects nothing, simply does its job with quiet competence, the unsung hero that makes every journey possible. Walk through any ship's engine room or technical space, and you'll see pipes everywhere, running along ceilings, down walls, through compartments, creating a complex network that looks chaotic at first glance. But look closer, and you'll notice they're painted in different colors, and suddenly the chaos resolves into order, into a carefully organized system where every color tells a story. Red pipes carry fire suppression systems, water or foam that can flood spaces in emergencies, fighting flames before they spread. Green pipes bring fresh water, the processed, purified water that crew members drink and cook with and shower in. Blue pipes handle seawater, bringing the ocean inside for cooling systems and ballast. Yellow marks flammable liquids like fuel oil, a warning to approach with caution and respect. This color coding is universal, a language spoken on ships around the world, An engineer from any nation can walk into an unfamiliar engine room and immediately understand the layout, know which pipes contain what, identify systems by sight alone. It's efficiency and safety combined, a visual shorthand that transcends language barriers. There's an aesthetic beauty to these colored pipes when you learn to see them properly. They're like the circulatory system of the ship, made visible, arteries and veins carrying essential fluids to every part of the vessel. Follow a green pipe, and you're following water from the purification system to the galley. Trace a red pipe, and you're mapping the fire suppression network, seeing how protection reaches every space. The pipes hum quietly with flow, vibrate gently with pressure. They're warm to the touch in some places, cool in others, each temperature telling you something about what's flowing inside. Engineers develop an almost intimate relationship with these pipes, learning to recognize subtle changes in sound or vibration that might indicate developing problems. They listen to the ship speaking through its colored veins, and they understand what it's saying at night in the quiet hours when you walk through technical spaces lit only by emergency lighting. These colored pipes create an almost abstract artwork. Lines of red and green and blue and yellow crisscrossing through shadow, a functional sculpture that happens to keep the ship alive. Throughout the ship, spaced at regular intervals, there are doors unlike any you'd find on land. They're thick, heavy, made of solid steel, and when closed, they seal completely, creating impenetrable barriers that can divide the ship into separate, isolated compartments. These are watertight doors, and they're one of the most important safety features ever designed for vessels at sea. Most of the time, they stand open, allowing free passage through the ship. You walk through them without thinking, perhaps noting their thickness, their massive hinges, the rubber seals around their edges, but not really appreciating what they represent. They're patient guardians, waiting for a crisis that will hopefully never come, but their presence is deeply reassuring. These doors mean that if water enters one compartment, through damage, through flooding, through any breach, it can be contained. The door closes, sometimes automatically, sometimes manually, and suddenly that section of ship is isolated. The water can't spread, can't sink the entire vessel, can't turn a contained problem into catastrophe. Closing a watertight door is a deliberate act. The heavy steel swings on its hinges. The sealing mechanism engages with satisfying solidity. The wheel or lever locks it tight. There's a finality to it, a sense of protection secured. In drills, the crew practices closing these doors quickly, efficiently, but even in practice there's no panic, no rush, just calm, methodical competence. The spaces between watertight doors are called compartments, and a ship is designed so that even if several compartments flood, the vessel remains afloat. It's a philosophy of survival through separation, of accepting that damage might occur, but planning to contain it, limit it, survive it. These calm barriers embody that philosophy, standing ready, silent sentinels that hope never to be needed, but are always prepared. Walking through a watertight door, you might pause for just a moment, touch the cold steel, appreciate the engineering that went into its design. It's protection made tangible, safety you can see and touch, a promise that even in the worst circumstances, the ship will fight to keep its people safe. In various locations around the deck, often in quiet corners or tucked against bulkheads, there are vertical pipes that seem to serve no obvious purpose. They're capped at the top, marked with small labels, and they descend through deck after deck, reaching down to the very bottom of the ship. These are sounding pipes, and they're one of the oldest and most reliable ways to measure what's happening deep in the vessel's tanks and holds. The principle is beautifully simple. Lower a weighted measuring tape down the pipe until it touches the bottom, then pull it back up. Where the tape shows moisture or oil, you know the liquid level. It's low tech, requiring no electronics, no power, no complex systems, just gravity and a measuring tape and human observation. These pipes reach down to ballast tanks, to fuel bunkers, to freshwater reserves, to any space that holds liquid. They provide a direct connection from the deck to the ship's deepest recesses, a way to literally sound the depths, to know precisely how much is stored below. The term sounding comes from this practice, measuring depth, whether of water outside the hull or liquid inside tanks. There's something meditative about taking soundings. It's a slow, deliberate process. You remove the cap, lower the tape, hand over hand, feeling for the moment when weight touches bottom. The tape descends through darkness, through spaces you can't see, reporting back through touch and measurement what the depths contain. Then the careful retrieval, watching the tape emerge, reading the marks that tell you exactly what you need to know. In an age of electronic sensors and digital readouts, sounding pipes remain as backup, as verification, as the method that works even when power fails or sensors malfunction. Their reliability itself, simple physics applied to practical need, and they've been performing this same function on ships for centuries. Standing beside a sounding pipe, you're connected to the deep places of the ship, to the hidden tanks and bilges far below. These pipes are channels of information, carrying knowledge upward from the depths, quiet servants that help the crew understand and manage the vessel they depend on. All across the ship's deck and within its spaces, there's a subtle but essential system working constantly, small channels and gutters that guide water away, ensuring that moisture never accumulates where it shouldn't. These drain channels are everywhere. Once you start noticing them, carved into deck plating, molded into passageway floors, directing water's flow with quiet efficiency. Rain falls on deck, waves wash over the bow, condensation forms in cooler spaces, and always the drain channels are ready. They whisper water towards scuppers, openings in the ship's sides, where it can flow safely back to the ocean. The sound is gentle, barely perceptible, a soft trickling that becomes part of the ship's ambient music. In heavier weather, when seas break over the deck, these channels become urgent, carrying substantial flows, but even then they work calmly, methodically, never overwhelmed if properly maintained. The water rushes through them, following paths designed by engineers who understood fluid dynamics, and within seconds, the deck is clear again, ready for the next wave. There's an elegance to well-designed drainage, a recognition that water is persistent, patient, and must be respected. Fight water and you'll lose, guide water, and it becomes manageable, even cooperative. The drain channels embody this philosophy, working with water's nature rather than against it. Listen carefully during a rain shower at sea, and you can hear them, soft whispers from dozens of channels, water finding its way, flowing where it's supposed to flow, the ship shedding moisture like a living thing. It's one of those background sounds that contribute to the peaceful atmosphere of life at sea, a reminder that even something as simple as rain has been anticipated, planned for, accommodated by the vessel's careful design. Strip away everything from a ship, the accommodations, the machinery, the cargo, the complexity, and what remains is, in essence, a giant steel box designed to float, The hull is the fundamental structure, the foundation upon which everything else is built, and its simplicity is deceiving. This box is one of humanity's most refined inventions, shaped by thousands of years of hard-won knowledge about how to survive on water. Hull is curved in ways that look natural, even organic, but every curve serves a purpose. The bow cuts through water efficiently. The stern allows water to flow smoothly past. The sides provide stability and strength. The steel plates are welded together with such precision that the seams are as strong as the plates themselves, creating a unified structure that can flex slightly in heavy seas without cracking, a rigid box that knows how to be flexible when it must be. This box is built to contain not just air and cargo, but also to exclude the ocean, to keep vast quantities of water outside while supporting the weight of everything inside. It's a pressure vessel in reverse, dealing with forces from outside, pushing in rather than inside pushing out. Every square inch of hull below the waterline experiences the steady pressure of the sea, and the steel resists it effortlessly, year after year. Walking inside the hull, in the cargo holds or lower compartments, you see the structure revealed. Massive ribs called frames, running vertically up the sides, giving the hull its shape and strength. Longitudinal stiffeners running the length of the ship, preventing the hull from flexing too much. It's like standing inside the rib cage of an enormous metal creature, and you understand suddenly that this isn't just a box. It's a carefully engineered skeleton designed to distribute forces, to flex and yield just enough to protect and contain. The beauty of this giant box is that it's simultaneously simple and sophisticated. Any child can understand the concept, make something that floats and keeps water out, but the execution requires advanced metallurgy, complex mathematics, deep understanding of hydrodynamics. The result is elegant in its own way, a massive steel container that crosses oceans, carrying civilizations, goods and people safely from one shore to another. Descend into a ship's cargo hold, and you enter a space that feels unexpectedly sacred. The scale is cathedral-like, vast open volumes stretching upward through multiple decks, the steel walls rising like pillars, the overhead beams like vaulted ceilings, and like cathedrals, these holds are often divided into sections, separate naves each with its own purpose, creating a sense of order and intentionality in the cavernous space. The divisions serve practical purposes, of course. They create separate compartments for different types of cargo, allowing grain in one section, containers in another, heavy machinery in a third. They provide structural support, the bulkheads between sections strengthening the hull, preventing the entire hold from being one potentially catastrophic open space. And they create the watertight compartmentation that keeps ships afloat even when damaged. But there's also an aesthetic experience to these divided holds. Standing at the bottom and looking up, you see geometry playing with light and shadow. Natural light filtering down through hatch openings above creates beams that illuminate floating dust particles. The echo of your footsteps rings off metal surfaces, creating acoustic spaces that feel ancient despite being modern. The air is different here, cooler, more still, carrying the faint smell of previous cargoes, a history written in scent. During cargo operations, these cathedral-like spaces come alive. Containers are lowered through the open hatches, suspended on crane cables, descending through the light beams like offerings being presented. The scale of everything, the containers, the cranes, the holds themselves, creates a drama that's almost ritualistic. Workers guide each massive load into position, chanting directions to the crane operators far above. their voices echoing through the steel mave. When the holds are empty, they're even more impressive. Pure volume, pure potential, waiting to be filled. Walking through them, your footsteps ringing, your voice echoing back from distant bulkheads. You feel small, but not insignificant. You're inside one of the tools humans have created to connect the world, a space designed to carry millions of pounds of cargo safely across thousands of miles of ocean. It's industrial architecture at its most functional, and somehow its most beautiful. There's a term in maritime architecture that sounds deceptively simple, but represents something fundamental about how ships are built. The tank top is not the top of a tank in the way you might think. Instead, it's a complete deck, a continuous floor that runs the length and width of the ship at the lowest practical level, separating the cargo spaces and accommodations above from the double bottom and lower compartments below. Walk on the tank top and you're standing on the ship's inner floor, the solid foundation upon which everything else is built. Above you might be cargo holds, machinery spaces, accommodations, the visible, active parts of the ship. Below you are tanks for fuel, ballast, fresh water, and the hidden structural spaces that give the vessel its strength. The tank top is the boundary between these two worlds, the platform that makes human activity possible while protecting the vital systems beneath. This deck is incredibly strong. It has to be. It supports the weight of cargo, machinery, equipment, everything that loads into the ship. Engineers calculate these loads precisely, ensuring the tank top can handle static weight and also dynamic forces. When the ship rolls in heavy seas and everything shifts and stresses the structure differently. The steel plating is thick, reinforced with a framework of beams and girders underneath, creating a structure that can distribute tons of weight evenly across its entire surface. There's also a philosophical elegance to the tank top's role. It creates a clean separation between the working ship above and the essential systems below. Maintenance crews can access the spaces beneath without interfering with cargo operations above. If damage occurs to the lower hull, the tank top provides an additional barrier, a second line of defense that might prevent flooding from reaching upper spaces. Walking across a tank top in an empty hold, your footsteps ring with a particular resonance, solid, confident, the sound of steel under steel. It's not hollow or tinny, but substantial, a reminder that beneath this floor is structure, is strength, is engineering designed to keep you safe. The tank top doesn't call attention to itself, doesn't announce its importance, but everything above it depends on its unwavering, steady presence. Beneath the tank top, in spaces most crew members never see, there exists a hidden second hull, the double bottom. This is one of the most important safety innovations in maritime history, a redundant structure that means if the outer hull is breached, there's another complete layer of protection underneath. The space between these two hulls is typically a few feet, creating a gap filled with carefully designed tanks and compartments. Some hold fuel oil, others fresh water, still others are ballast tanks that can be filled with seawater or emptied to adjust the ship's trim and stability. But all of them serve a secondary vital purpose. They create separation between the ocean and the ship's interior spaces. Imagine the ship running aground, scraping over rocks that tear through the outer hull. Without a double bottom, the ocean would rush in, flooding holds and engine rooms, potentially sinking the vessel. With a double bottom, the outer hull might be breached, but the inner hull remains intact. The damaged tank between the hulls might flood, but the rest of the ship stays dry. It's protection through redundancy, safety through thoughtful design. The double bottom also makes the ship stronger as a structure. The two hulls, connected by a framework of floors and girders, create what engineers call a torsion box, a rigid structure that resists twisting and bending. The ship can flex in heavy seas without structural failure, supported by this hidden internal skeleton. Maintenance in the double bottom is challenging work. Access is through small hatches, and crew members descend into confined spaces, navigating between the hulls with flashlights, inspecting for corrosion, checking tank integrity, ensuring the protective barrier remains sound. It's uncomfortable, sometimes claustrophobic work, but essential. The double bottom protects the ship only if it's properly maintained. There's something reassuring about knowing this hidden layer exists beneath you. You walk on the tank top, you go about your daily life, and underneath, invisible but present, there's another complete hull, another barrier between you and the sea. It's protection you can't see, but you can trust it's there, doing its quiet work, keeping you safe. At the heart of a ship's structural integrity is a concept borrowed from aircraft design. The torsion box. It's not a single component you can point to, but rather a way of thinking about how the entire vessel is built, as a giant box-like structure that resists twisting and bending through the interaction of its multiple parts working together. Think of the ship as a massive steel tube, but instead of being one piece, it's constructed from the outer hull, the inner hull of the double bottom, the deck plating above, and the bulkheads dividing the length. These four surfaces, bottom, top, and two sides, are connected by a framework of longitudinal girders and transverse frames, creating a three-dimensional structure that's remarkably rigid yet able to flex within safe limits. When waves hit the ship, they create complex forces, a wave supporting the middle of the ship, while the bow and stern hang. Unsupported creates sagging forces. Waves supporting both ends, while the middle is unsupported, create hogging forces. The ship bends slightly, the steel flexes, and the torsion box structure distributes these forces throughout the entire hull, preventing any one spot from being overstressed. The beauty of this design is that every part contributes to the whole. The deck plating isn't just a flaw, it's part of the structural system. The bulkheads aren't just dividers. They're support members preventing the hull from collapsing inward. The longitudinal girders aren't just beams. They're the ship's spine, running from bow to stern, tying everything together. Remove any piece and the structure weakens. Keep all pieces working together, and the ship can withstand forces that would tear apart simpler designs. Naval architects spend years learning to calculate the stresses in a torsion box hull, using complex mathematics to ensure that every voyage, every load, every sea condition falls within safe parameters. They're designing something that must survive decades of use, millions of wave impacts, countless loading and unloading cycles, temperature changes, corrosion, and still remain strong enough to protect the people who depend on it. Walking through a ship, you're inside this torsion box, surrounded by its protective structure. Every deck you stand on, every bulkhead you pass, every frame you see is part of this integrated system. The ship isn't just a building that floats. It's a carefully designed, precisely engineered structure that flexes and breathes and distributes forces with elegant efficiency. It's the spine that gives the vessel its strength, the hidden architecture that makes ocean travel possible. The engineering of a ship is a kind of invisible poetry. Systems working in harmony, structures supporting one another, redundant protection layered throughout. These hidden muscles and colored arteries, these calm barriers and protective double hulls, they all exist to keep you safe, to keep the vessel strong, to ensure that when you're far from land, surrounded by water, you're cradled in steel that understands the ocean and knows how to survive it. As you drift towards sleep now, imagine yourself within this careful construction, protected by layers of engineering thought, surrounded by systems that work quietly through the night. The propeller turns steadily far below. The drains whisper away moisture. The watertight doors stand ready but unneeded. The ship is a marvel of human ingenuity, and you're safe within its torsion box spine, rocking gently, moving forward, carried through the peaceful dark. Now, we're going to explore the subtle details and quiet marvels that make modern seafaring so remarkable. From hidden shapes beneath the waterline to the delicate balance that keeps thousands of tons stable. From the steel flowers that breathe for the ship to the invisible connections between vessels crossing the same vast ocean. These are stories of efficiency and elegance, of human ingenuity applied to the ancient challenge of moving across water. Let yourself sink into these gentle observations, these peaceful facts about life at sea. There's no rush, nowhere to be. Just breathe, relax, and drift with me through these calm waters of knowledge. If you could see beneath the waterline at the very front of a modern ship, you'd discover something unexpected, a massive, rounded protrusion bulging forward from the hull like an underwater forehead. This is the bulbous bow, and though it's completely hidden during normal operations, it's one of the most important fuel-saving innovations in maritime history. The bulge seems counterintuitive at first. You'd think adding anything to the front of a ship would create more resistance, slow it down, make it less efficient. But physics has its own logic, its own surprising truths. As the ship moves forward, it pushes a wave ahead of itself, a bow wave that requires energy to create and maintain. The bulbous bow, positioned at just the right depth and angle, creates its own wave system that interferes with and partially cancels out the bow wave, reducing overall resistance. The fuel savings are substantial, often 10 to 15% compared to ships without this feature. Over the course of a voyage or over the lifetime of a vessel, this translates to thousands of tons of fuel saved, millions of dollars preserved, countless tons of emissions prevented, all from this hidden bulb beneath the waves, working silently, invisibly, doing its work where human eyes rarely see it. Divers who inspect the hull underwater report that the bulbous bow has its own strange beauty, a smooth whale-like curve, often covered in marine growth when the ship has been at sea for months, barnacles and algae claiming this underwater real estate. It's a meeting place between human engineering and ocean life, technology and nature coexisting in the hidden depths. The bulbous bow represents a kind of humility in engineering, the willingness to accept that nature's rules might require solutions that seem wrong at first glance. Trust the mathematics, trust the physics, add something that looks like it shouldn't work but does, beautifully, efficiently, voyage after voyage, hidden beneath the waves like a secret the ship keeps to itself. Ship floating perfectly level is actually quite rare. Most of the time, vessels have slight tilts, forward or backward. This is called trim, side to side. This is called list. These tilts are measured in degrees, often just fractions of a degree, barely perceptible to someone standing on deck, but crucial to the ship's performance and safety. Trim affects how the ship moves through water. A slight trim by the stern, the back of the ship sitting slightly lower than the front, can improve fuel efficiency for certain vessel types and speeds. The propeller operates in deeper, more undisturbed water, and the hull's angle changes how it interacts with waves. Officers adjust trim by shifting ballast water between forward and aft tanks, tons of water moving slowly through pipes, changing the ship's balance degree by degree. List is generally undesirable. A side-to-side tilt suggests uneven loading or ballast distribution. A ship with significant list is uncomfortable to live in. Floors slope, walking feels wrong, and in extreme cases it can become dangerous, affecting stability. Officers work carefully to maintain zero list, or as close to it as possible, ensuring the vessel sits level in the water, balanced perfectly between port and starboard. The adjustments are constant, subtle, almost like breathing. As fuel is consumed, the ship becomes lighter, and ballast must be added to maintain proper draft, the depth to which the hull sits in the water. As cargo is loaded or unloaded in port, trim and list change, and compensation must be made. It's an ongoing conversation between the ship and its officers, a gentle dance of weight and balance. There's something meditative about monitoring trim and list, about making tiny adjustments that shift thousands of tons, about maintaining that perfect balance through changing conditions. The ship responds slowly to these changes. Ballast water takes time to transfer, trim adjusts gradually, and patience is required. You make your adjustment, then wait, watching instruments, feeling the ship settle into its new attitude, confirming that the balance is correct. Standing on a deck that feels perfectly level, you might never realize how much work went into creating that feeling, how many subtle adjustments were made to give you that sense of stability and rightness. The ship is always listening to itself, always adjusting, always seeking that perfect equilibrium between sky and sea. Rising from the deck of every ship, you'll see unusual structures that look almost organic, curved cowlings and mushroom-shaped covers, cylindrical towers with openings angled to catch the wind. These are ventilators, the ship's breathing apparatus, and they have their own strange beauty, like steel flowers growing from metal ground. Each ventilator serves a purpose, bringing fresh air into the spaces below or allowing stale air to escape. The design is simple but clever. The cowling can be rotated to face into the wind, scooping air and directing it down into the duct below, or turned away from the wind to create a low-pressure area that pulls air upward from inside the ship. No power needed, just wind and physics, the same principles that have ventilated ships for centuries. On modern vessels, many of these natural ventilators have been supplemented or replaced by powered ventilation systems, fans and blowers that can move air regardless of wind direction or speed. But the old-style ventilators remain, especially in cargo holds and less critical spaces, still doing their patient work, still breathing for the ship. There's an aesthetic pleasure in seeing these ventilators arrayed across the deck, each one slightly different in size or shape depending on its specific function, but all sharing that quality of purposeful design. They're painted in the ship's colors, often white or gray, and they weather beautifully, the paint wearing in patterns that reveal their relationship with wind and salt spray. Sailors learn to read ventilators like a language. A ventilator facing aft on the foredeck means the wind is from ahead. Multiple ventilators all oriented the same direction confirm wind patterns. In port, when the ship is stationary, crew members carefully adjust ventilators to maximize airflow through accommodation spaces, creating cooling breezes in the tropical heat or managing moisture in colder climates. At night, standing on deck, you might hear them, a soft rushing as air flows through their ducts, a gentle whistle when wind catches them at certain angles. They're part of the ship's quiet song these steel flowers that bloom without color, but serve with faithfulness, breathing in the freshness of the ocean and exhaling the stillness of enclosed spaces, keeping the air moving, keeping everything healthy and alive. On container ships, when the deck is loaded with hundreds or thousands of containers stacked high, there emerges a need for access, ways to reach containers that might need inspection, lashing gear that must be adjusted, areas that require maintenance. The solution is lashing bridges, narrow walkways that span from one container stack to another, creating a maze of elevated paths high above the deck. These bridges are temporary structures, assembled during loading and adjusted as the container arrangement changes. They're typically made of aluminum or steel grating, lightweight but strong, laid across the tops of containers and secured. Walking on them requires confidence and balance. They're narrow, they flex slightly under your weight, and all around you, containers tower even higher, creating steel canyons that block the wind and alter your sense of space. For the crew members who work on deck, these lashing bridges become familiar territory. They learn to move along them confidently, carrying tools and equipment, checking the twist locks and lashing rods that hold containers in place, ensuring that everything is secure before the ship ventures into rough seas. It's work done at height, with the deck far below and the ocean visible between gaps in the containers. There's something slightly surreal about being up among the containers, walking these elevated paths. While the ship rolls gently beneath you, you're in a steel forest, surrounded by rectangular metal boxes in a dozen different colors: mask blue, evergreen green, CMA CGM blue, MST yellow, each one stamped with codes and numbers, each one containing cargo bound for distant ports. The view from the lashing bridges is unique. You see the ship from an angle most passengers never experience, looking down at the deck, across at the bridge, in the distance, out at the ocean beyond the container's edges. You understand suddenly how much cargo the ship is carrying, how these thousands of boxes represent commerce and connection, goods moving from where they're made to where they're needed. Safety is paramount on the lashing bridges. Crew members clip their safety harnesses to guidelines, wear hard hats and gloves, move deliberately rather than hastily. A fall from these heights would be serious, and the ocean's motion amplifies small movements, making the bridges sway more than you'd expect. Respect and caution become second nature. When the weather turns rough and seas build, the lashing bridges are sometimes removed, deemed too dangerous for access. The containers are already secured, the work is done, and the crew retreats to safer areas, leaving the steel forest to sway and creak on its own. The bridge is no longer needed, the containers left to ride out the weather in their carefully calculated arrangements. Look at any ship's cargo plan, and you'll see a grid of numbers that seems arcane at first, combinations of digits that identify every single location where cargo can be stored. But once you understand the system, you realize it's beautifully logical, allows anyone in the world to specify exactly where a particular container or piece of cargo should be placed. The numbering typically works in 3 parts. The first digits indicate the bay, counting from forward to aft, odd numbers on one side, even on the other, creating a systematic progression from bow to stern. The middle digits specify the row, counting from centerline to port and starboard, again with a logical progression. The final digits indicate the tier, the vertical level, counting from the bottom of the hold upward through deck levels and into the stacks above. With this system, a code like 120,482 inches tells you everything you need to know: which bay, which row, which tier, A crane operator can read this code and know precisely where to place a container. A ship's officer can verify that cargo is loaded according to plan. A longshoreman can locate a specific box among thousands without confusion. The logic extends throughout the ship. Critical cargo is placed in positions where it can be accessed easily. Refrigerated containers go where electrical connections are available. Heavy cargo goes low in the holds for stability. Dangerous goods are segregated according to regulations. Incompatible materials kept at safe distances. All of this is managed through the numbering system, a quiet language of position and placement. There's a meditation to working with these numbers, to planning the loading sequence, ensuring that cargo destined for the first port is accessible, that the ship's stability is maintained through every stage of loading and unloading. It's a three-dimensional puzzle solved with mathematics and logistics, and the numbering system is the tool that makes it possible. As a meditation to working with these numbers, to planning the loading sequence, ensuring that cargo destined for the first port is accessible, that the ship's stability is maintained through every stage of loading and unloading. It's a three-dimensional puzzle solved with mathematics and logistics, and the numbering system is the tool that makes it possible. For crew members, certain bay numbers become familiar, almost comfortable. The bays near the accommodation block where you can hear activity, the forward bays that take the most weather, the aft bays near the engine where vibration is more noticeable. Each location has its character, its qualities, but all are identified and organized by this quiet logic of numbers, this universal system that brings order to the complexity of cargo operations. Out on the ocean, ships often travel in loose, invisible convoys, not organized formations, but natural groupings that emerge from shared routes and similar speeds. Ships leaving port at roughly the same time, bound for similar destinations, find themselves traveling parallel courses, sometimes within sight of each other, sometimes just visible on radar, sometimes completely beyond visual range, but still moving together through the same waters. These informal caravans arise from the logic of shipping schedules and navigation. Certain routes are most efficient for certain voyages, and ships naturally converge on these optimum paths. The Great Circle routes that minimize distance, the traffic separation schemes that organize flow through congested waters, the waypoints that mark traditional passages, all of these create invisible highways where ships cluster without ever formally coordinating. On the bridge at night, officers watch their radar screens and see these patterns. Green blips representing other vessels, each one moving at slightly different speeds, some gradually pulling ahead, others falling behind, but all generally heading in the same direction. It's oddly companionable, this shared journey, even though you might never communicate with those other ships, might never even see them with your eyes. There's a comfort in knowing other vessels are out there, traveling alongside you through the darkness. If something went wrong, if you needed help, these distant companions would respond, would alter course, would render assistance. The unwritten law of the sea demands it, and these hidden caravans embody a quiet solidarity between mariners. Sometimes these groupings become visible during daylight. You spot another ship on the horizon, maintaining a parallel course, staying there day after day. You might recognize it by silhouette or by its distinctive paint scheme. There's that Costco ship again, someone might say, noting a vessel that's been a distant companion for 3 days. Never closer than 10 miles, never communicating, but somehow reassuring in its presence. The caravans shift and change as ships reach their destinations and peel off from the group, or as new vessels join from different origins. The composition is constantly evolving, a fluid gathering that exists without structure or leadership, held together only by similar destinations and the vast ocean's natural channeling of traffic. Knowing about these hidden caravans changes how you experience the ocean's emptiness. You might look out at a seemingly empty horizon, but you know that just beyond sight, just past the curve of the earth, other ships are making the same journey, facing the same seas, keeping their own watches through the same night. You're alone but not alone, isolated but connected, one vessel among many crossing the great waters. The VHF radio on every ship's bridge monitors Channel 16, the international distress frequency, at all times. Most days, the channel is silent except for routine traffic and occasional radio checks, but sometimes the radio crackles to life with words that make everyone stop and listen. Mayday, mayday, mayday. Someone, somewhere, is in trouble. These distress calls are often from vessels hundreds of miles away, their signals reaching you through atmospheric conditions or skip propagation, bouncing off the ionosphere to travel vast distances. You hear the panic or forced calm in the voice, hear the details, position, nature of emergency, number of people aboard, but you're too far away to help. All you can do is listen, relay the information if needed, and trust that someone closer is responding. There's something haunting about these disembodied voices calling for help across the void. They're real people in real danger, but they exist only as radio waves, as sound without presence. You might hear, "We are taking on water rapidly," or "We have a medical emergency," and you feel the weight of their situation while being utterly unable to affect it. Coast Guard stations respond, coordinate rescue efforts, dispatch help. Other ships closer to the position alter course, prepare to render assistance. The system works most of the time. The network of mariners and rescue services cooperating across distances to save lives. But listening from far away, you're reminded of the ocean's immensity, the vulnerability of vessels in distress, the thin margin between routine voyage and catastrophe. Sometimes you hear the resolution, a later transmission confirming that help has arrived, that the emergency is under control, that everyone is safe. The relief is palpable, even for strangers whose faces you'll never see. Other times, a call simply stops, and you're left wondering, hoping that silence means rescue rather than tragedy. These experiences stay with crews long after the voyage ends. Years later, a sailor might remember a particular distress call heard on a quiet night watch. Remember the voice, the desperate situation, the uncertainty. It reinforces the seriousness of what you're doing out here, the real risks that exist beyond the normal routine. The tradition of rendering assistance at sea is ancient and absolute. Ships respond to distress calls because everyone understands that someday you might be the one calling. The ocean is vast and dangerous, and the only thing standing between a vessel in trouble and disaster is the willingness of other mariners to help, to alter course, to respond, to care about strangers in distress. Most voyages pass without ever hearing a genuine mayday call, but the radio stays on, always listening, ready to receive that call if it comes, connecting you to an invisible web of vessels, all monitoring, all ready, all part of the unspoken covenant of the sea. On modern container ships, the bridge is positioned far aft, elevated high above the deck on a tower that rises from the superstructure. From this vantage point, the officers look forward across what can only be described as a steel forest. Hundreds or thousands of containers stacked in orderly rows, creating a cityscape of rectangular metal boxes that stretches toward the bow, sometimes extending so far that the ship's front is barely visible. The height is necessary for visibility over this forest of cargo. The bridge might be 10, 12, even 15 stories above the waterline, giving the watch officers a commanding view. From here they can see over the containers, can observe the horizon, can navigate the ship safely, despite having a small steel city blocking their view of anything close to the bow. Working up here requires adjustment for new crew members. The motion is amplified by height. A gentle roll of the hull becomes a slow, sweeping arc at bridge level. In heavy seas, a bridge sways noticeably, and anything not secured slides across surfaces. You learn to walk with bent knees, to anticipate the motion, to move with the ship rather than fighting it. But the view is spectacular. You're higher than most buildings, with nothing but glass between you and the 360-degree panorama of ocean. At night, the stars seem closer. During the day, you can see weather systems forming on the distant horizon. Watch squalls approaching from miles away. Observe the subtle color changes in water that indicate depth or current. Looking down at the container stacks is like looking down at city blocks from a tall building, except these blocks are moving, swaying slightly with the ship's motion, and beyond them is only ocean. You watch crew members walking the lashing bridges far below, tiny figures among the steel boxes. You see the spray from waves hitting containers in the forward stacks during rough weather, white foam arcing up and evaporating in the wind. The bridge feels separate from the rest of the ship, isolated by height and purpose. Here, decisions are made, courses are set, navigation is planned, the atmosphere is professional, focused, calm, even in challenging conditions. Large windows provide that commanding view, and the console wraps around the space, filled with screens and instruments, radar, GPS, electronic charts, engine controls, communication equipment. It's the ship's brain, and it's perched here above everything else, surveying its domain. At shift changes, the outgoing watch briefs the incoming watch, pointing out contacts on radar, noting any unusual conditions, discussing the course and expected weather. There's a ritual quality to it, a careful handover of responsibility. Then the new watch settles in, assuming that responsibility, becoming the eyes and mind of the vessel for the next 4 hours. From the steel forest below comes occasional sounds. The creaking of lashing gear, the hum of refrigerated containers cooling units, the wind whistling between the boxes. But up here on the bridge, you're above most of that noise, in a space designed for observation and decision-making, elevated literally and figuratively above the cargo, guiding the entire assembly through the water toward distant ports. Decades ago, a cargo ship might carry a crew of 50 or more, able seamen, oilers, wipers, messmen, a full complement of officers and ratings, each person with a specific role in the operation of the vessel. The crew mess would be crowded at mealtimes, voices and laughter filling the space, a bustling community living and working together at sea. Today, that same size vessel might operate with a crew of 20 or fewer. Modern automation, more efficient systems, simplified machinery, and improved technology have made this reduction possible. One person monitors systems that once required 3. Machinery runs more reliably with less maintenance. Navigation equipment has eliminated positions that were once essential. The change brings mixed feelings. On one hand, fewer crew members means lower costs, simpler logistics, less food and water needed, smaller accommodation spaces. Ships are more economically efficient, which keeps shipping costs down and makes global trade more viable. The technology works remarkably well, and small crews can operate large vessels safely and effectively. On the other hand, something has been lost. The ships are quieter now, less populated, sometimes feeling almost empty despite their size. The social dynamics are different when there are only 20 people instead of 50. Every personality becomes more significant, relationships matter more, and the isolation of sea life feels deeper when there are fewer companions. The remaining crew members work harder, covering more responsibilities, learning multiple skills. A deck officer might also handle cargo planning. An engineer might perform maintenance work that once belonged to specialists. Cross-training is common, and the crew becomes remarkably versatile, each person capable of performing various functions. There's also a loss of institutional knowledge. The older system of large crews meant experienced sailors working alongside newcomers, teaching through daily interaction, passing down the accumulated wisdom of the sea. With smaller crews and fewer junior positions, this mentorship happens less naturally, and new mariners must learn more independently. Yet the small crews often become tightly bonded, family-like in their closeness. 20 people working together for months develop deep understanding, trust, and camaraderie. They know each other's habits, moods, strengths, and quirks. They look out for one another because there's no one else to depend on, no extra hands to call on if someone is sick or overwhelmed. The trend continues. Some shipping companies experiment with crews of 15 or even fewer. There's talk of autonomous vessels, ships that might operate with no crew at all, controlled remotely from shore-based operation centers. The future of crewing is uncertain, but for now, these small groups of 20 or so mariners continue the ancient tradition of going to sea, carrying on despite reduced numbers, proving that even with fewer people, the essential work of connecting the world by water continues. Here's a number that captures the incredible efficiency and responsibility of modern shipping. On a large container ship, each crew member is effectively responsible for managing about 10,000 tons of cargo. A ship carrying 200,000 tons of cargo with a crew of 20 means each person represents 10,000 tons of responsibility. Think about what that means. 10,000 tons is approximately the weight of 70 blue whales, or 200 fully loaded semi-trucks, or the entire cargo of a small cargo ship from decades past. And that's how much cargo each crew member helps manage, move, secure, and deliver across thousands of miles of ocean. The mathematics are humbling. A single able seaman working on deck isn't just tending to ropes and paint, they're part of the system that keeps 10,000 tons of cargo secure, that ensures nothing shifts or breaks free during storms, that maintains the lashing gear and securing equipment that holds mountains of weight in place. An engineer monitoring the engines isn't just running machinery, they're maintaining the propulsion system that moves 10,000 tons per crew member through resistant water, burning fuel efficiently, keeping everything running smoothly so that all that cargo arrives on time. A navigation officer plotting the course isn't just drawing lines on charts. They're determining the path that will safely convey hundreds of thousands of tons through traffic, weather, and variable conditions, making decisions that affect the timely delivery of goods worth millions of dollars. This ratio reveals both the incredible leverage of modern technology and the enormous trust placed in each crew member. Systems and automation make it possible for small crews to handle such massive quantities, but human judgment remains essential. When something goes wrong, when decisions must be made, when unexpected situations arise, those 20 or so people must respond correctly, and the stakes are measured in thousands of tons. It's also a testament to how vital shipping is to the global economy. Those 10,000 tons per person multiply across thousands of ships, operating simultaneously around the world. The quantities become almost incomprehensible. Billions of tons of cargo in motion at any moment, managed by hundreds of thousands of crew members, connecting every nation, supplying every market, making modern life possible. For the individual crew member, this ratio can feel overwhelming or empowering depending on perspective. It's pressure, knowing how much depends on you doing your job correctly. But it's also pride, knowing that you're capable of handling such responsibility, that you're trusted with such important work, that your contribution matters on a scale most people never experience. Late at night on watch, looking out at the container stacks or down at the cargo holds, a crew member might contemplate this number, might do the mental arithmetic. My share is 10,000 tons, enough to fill a train stretching for miles, enough to supply a small city with goods for weeks. All of this responsibility shared among my crewmates as we cross this ocean together. Just 20 or so people managing a floating warehouse the size of a football field, carrying the world's commerce safely to port. The modern ship is a marvel of efficiency and scale, moving incredible quantities with remarkable precision, guided by small crews working with sophisticated systems, from the hidden bulbous bow beneath the waves to the elevated bridge perched above steel forests of cargo. From the subtle balance of trim to the enormous responsibility measured in thousands of tons per person, every aspect reveals human ingenuity applied to the timeless challenge of crossing water. As sleep comes to you now, imagine yourself part of this elegant system, this dance of technology and tradition, moving peacefully through the night seas. The ventilators breathe for the ship. The hidden caravans travel alongside. The quiet logic of numbers keeps everything organized and safe. You're floating through the darkness, one tiny person in a vast system, but essential, valuable, trusted. Rest deeply now, knowing that out there on the oceans, small crews are guiding massive vessels safely through the night, carrying the world's goods, maintaining the connections that bind us all. A journey continues. All is well.